And we have Elizabeth, who is a speech language pathologist, and I'm going to pass it on to her so that she can continue to explain her journey to her current career and just, some basic information about what she does each and every day. So Elizabeth, you could take it away.
Okay, well, I've been a speech pathologist for 26 years. I went to SEMO in Cape Girardeau. By the end of my sophomore year, I had no idea what I wanted to do or be when I grew up. I was an English major, but I didn't want to teach it. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And every single class I had that spring semester at the end of sophomore year, somebody was changing their major to communication disorders. And so I thought, well, I'll just see what that's about. I literally had no, it's not like when I was young, I thought I wanted to do this or I even knew anything about it. I just didn't have a direction. It sounded interesting from the way they spoke about it. It combined, I like more medical and science things, but then I really like language and English. I actually started out at St. Louis College of Pharmacy and my first semester there, and I loved my English class. So I switched to SEMO. So I entered my junior year taking Intro to Communication Disorders, and it was the perfect blend of science and language for me. And so entry-level position is a master's degree. So I graduated. You can work in a school setting without your master's, but truly to be a full-fledged speech pathologist, you have to get your master's and you have to get a certification. So I did that. I worked primarily in nursing homes when I first got out, but I have filled in hospitals. I have done home health. I have done everybody from preschool, 1 year old to the elderly. So I've really had just about every age there is. I went to the schools about 20 years ago and really never looked back. I liked my elderly patients. I didn't like the corporate setting, the corporate guidelines that went along in that setting. So although I liked my patients, I just needed a change and I switched to kids and just really never looked back from there. So I worked in schools. I just quit. I worked for Cape Public Schools for the last 12 years, actually. And I just left there. COVID kind of blew everything up for everybody, right? And we don't know how long things will last. We just didn't know what this school year would look like. And so right now what I do is I work for two different contract companies. I work 2 days a week for a company. The lady who owns it is in St. Louis. But so I work as a staff speech pathologist at Parkview State School. Mm-hmm. So I'm working with children whose IQs are 41 or below, and the average IQ is roughly 100. So those kids are very severely involved. They have multiple disabilities. And then I also now work for a company called Presence Learning, and it was teletherapy before people knew they needed teletherapy. They've actually been doing this for like 11 or 12 years, and COVID just really kind of brought them to the forefront. So I actually worked for Presence, but with a school in DeSoto, Illinois, just over by Carbondale, about an hour or so from Cape. But this is my home office, and I sit here 5 days a week from 8 until 3, and I do therapy like this over the computer.
So that was my next question. So how has the pandemic and COVID changed your job? Obviously, utilizing the technology, and some of the things have already been existent, like you mentioned. What's the future of speech language pathology, and what would students have to maybe better prepare themselves, since this whole career has kind of erupted into a best utilizing technology like what we're doing right now?
I'm not a fan of technology. I avoided technology as much as possible, and it forced me. Honestly, I didn't understand Google, like G Suite, any Google Mail, any of that. I didn't use it. And in order to get the job with presence learning, I had to go through training on all of that. I have to utilize our platform. You know, this is a platform, Google, Zoom, Google Meet, whatever. They have their own platform. I had to learn how to use the tools. Like, I can enable the kids to play games with me. I can give them control of their mouse. I can also lock them out of using their mouse. So you will have to use technology, period. So you just got to get used to that and start getting comfortable with it. One way it's changed a lot is I'm not exactly sure how any of the universities are going to be doing. Typically, the grad students do what's called an externship. And so when I was at CAPE, I had an externs. And so, you have a student, a grad level student who's with you 3 days a week, and they walk along beside you and do your job with you. And by the end of their semester, they are doing your job with you, just giving input and direction. I'm not sure how that has been looking for them over the course of the last year. I know it's been really hard because, you're beginning class, you have to get 25 observation hours. So I was actually going to contact the university and see like how they were doing that, and see if I would be able to help anyone and do that. So I think universities are going to have to change their way of training speech pathologists, absolutely, and get more creative. The big disadvantage to that, obviously, is there is no substitute for being right there with a child, right there to see, we put our hands on their faces, oh no, put your tongue up here, and I mean, like my adult patients who had a stroke and they had muscle weakness in their face. And so, maybe these facial muscles aren't moving. I did facial massage with them. Can't do that.
Can't do that through Zoom.
Right, can't do it on Zoom. So I think you just have to look for ways to, things that you lose by not being in person, you have to find new things to, if not exactly replace it, at least, try to fill in some of those gaps.
Yeah. So kind of branching off of that, you're actually not the first person to tell me that you went into kind of this field of communications disorders as a junior. I actually have several acquaintances who had the same thing. Like, it's
Really?
like this career, popped up in the middle of college, and they're like, actually, I'm going to go do this. So with that being said, this is such an informational video for those students to say, hey, maybe they've been previously impacted and they had a speech language pathologist in their lives, or this is like something completely new. In a time of COVID and just things changing, how can students better prepare themselves to be involved with maybe internships or shadowing? Like you mentioned, this virtual setting has erupted. Maybe what's the future of that with high school students?
With a high school student, not a college student, oh gosh, I think they need to start at their own school with the special ed department and the counselor, because that's the team at your school, right? The psych examiner, the counselor, possibly the speech paths, the special ed teachers. So if you don't know I don't know who my speech therapist is. Cape Central has several, lots and lots of kids. So not every kid, if they don't see a child going to speech or see a peer going to speech, they don't know who it is. Well, just ask one of your teachers, because your teachers know. They know who the speech path is, because they have to refer, or they have to answer questions, or they have to attend IEP meetings if they have a student who is that. So they can do that. They can reach out to their local colleges. Career counseling at colleges are pretty fabulous about helping kids, guiding them. Ask if you can, there are confidentiality issues, so asking if you can come and observe, you can. There are steps though. You might have to sign a confidentiality agreement. The school has to agree to it, but there are ways you can. You just got to reach out and ask and try and look for it, I guess.
Yeah. So what would you say is your favorite or most rewarding part of your job? I feel like there could be a few, and you certainly can give us a few. I know that you love being in person with people and such, so we would love to hear maybe your favorite from the virtual setting as well as the in-person setting.
Well, in person, it's, they hug you, I mean, you get the pre-K kid that throws himself on you and gives you a big hug, or the teacher pops over and says, oh my gosh, come see your kid, come watch this. So-and-so's going to give an oral report, come and listen to their R's. The in person, it's easy to have those fun moments. Online, I have found that I'm surprisingly, I don't know, it happens more than I thought it would, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. It's really cool teaching the kids how to use the tools, and they light up because they can do this neat stuff. And that's really fun. And then I really had to bring it down. I have a pre-K student. I mean, this child was, 3 years old when I started with him. Well, that's the kind of kid I would be in the floor playing with. I couldn't do that. I'm stuck behind this computer, and there's somebody there with him, obviously. And so we just were like, you know what, bring a toy. He can play. I can talk about it, And he, his first few times he cried. And then he looked up at me and I said, bye, buddy, I'll see you later. And he said, I love you. And I go, oh my gosh, you hadn't said 2 words until that, So that's fun. It's been more fun than I thought it would be, quite honestly.
No, that's great to know and hear. So going further, I know you mentioned that an entry-level position for a speech language pathologist is a master's.
Right.
What might some other positions be within your field? I don't know, like if you have a physical therapist and there's a physical therapist assistant, is there such a thing in that? Or, what are other branches?
There actually is an SLPA, a speech language pathology assistant. We don't have a program for that in our area, and it's not utilized in our area. That's going to be what the more typical iteration of that is. In the schools, you can provide speech services with just your bachelor's. But the school is required to have a speech language pathologist who oversees all of that. Of course, does all the testing. They can't test. They can only do the prescribed therapy that the speech path has set forward. And the schools are legally required to, if a certified speech language pathologist applies for that job, they have to hire them. Mm-hmm. So to me, there is zero advantage in being anything other than the fully licensed speech pathologist. It's just a high level position. Mm-hmm. And because, we're medically, we diagnose things. Mm-hmm. We diagnose, we treat. So it's a high level of skill that's needed. So there's no real replacement for that. You either are that or you're not, basically.
So with it being a high level job and, the science base behind it, what was the hardest part of obtaining a degree, whether if it was the hardest portion to fully grasp? I know you're laughing because you're like, oh, I know.
Neuroanatomy. I can tell you that right now. My neuroanatomy class with Dr. John Long at Southeast Missouri State University, and everybody that took that class from him will tell you the exact same thing.
Yeah.
That was absolutely the hardest class.
So how did you get through that?
Oh, a lot of study. and study groups and a lot of stress, and I had to lower my standards. I really liked making A's and B's, and I thought if I could just pass this, I'm fine. And I did.
Well, and I think it's important for students to know, because if they're so passionate about being in this career, to just not give up just because you don't get that, you know, maybe 4.0, and I know every program's so different. You know, you're human and you're going to have hard things, but you probably learn from that professor. Am I correct?
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. I mean, when you're doing something of that level, I'm a perfectionist. I want all A's. I always did. You know, I always wanted all A's. And then I was like, well, this is not a cakewalk. You know, I mean, and so you just have to be open to some parts of it are going to be really hard and challenge you, and you're frankly not going to like it. And other parts are going to be, they're going to be your jam and exactly what you love. You know, I don't want to be a neurobiologist. I don't want to be a brain surgeon, but I had to learn parts of that, obviously, because you have to learn that when you have a stroke on the left side of the brain, the right side of the body is affected. You have to know that as a speech pathologist and how to treat that. So it's not always easy, but it's very, very attainable, and it's very, very fun at times, because at CMO, well, everywhere, every program, I'm just most familiar with CMOs, you have clients. As a graduate student, I mean, you have a caseload and they come to you and you are their speech person and you do therapy with them. And that's pretty fun to get to do that as a college kid, you know, and to get to learn how to do that. And you get to learn how to do testing and stuff. And it's really fun when you go off to those externships and you're not sitting in the classroom anymore. You're seeing it. You're seeing it because as with almost any job, what they teach you in college is not how it looks typically in the real world. And so, you know, they're like, well, we were told to get, you know, try to get 50 trials on saying their sound. Yeah, no. If I can get this kid to say this 10 times in 30 minutes, it is success. You know, it's just very fun to see to take what you've learned and go, wow, now I learned this, but I have to think about a very different way of applying it, because I'm not in this little clean antiseptic clinical setting, you know, and all these toys and all these cool things available. You know, you may be in a school that doesn't have a lot of resources, so you have to be pretty creative. So that's the part to me that's really cool for a student, especially.
So my last question is, what advice do you have for students who might be considering this path, or they're just starting to learn more about it? Maybe this is the first introduction that they've had, but what advice do you have to those maybe high school students, and who knows if there's some first or second year college students watching this video as well?
I would say get out there and try to observe it. You know, contact a hospital, contact a college near you, and just ask your school right there. Say, could I go and see this? Could I talk to the speech therapist? Maybe, I mean, they're not going to let a peer go in, you know, for confidentiality reasons, but the speech path can schedule time and talk to them and show them what they do. You know, some places off-site may even let them come. You know, if you say, I used to work at Clifford, it may be, I get a call from a speech therapist at the high school, and she says, hey, I've got a kid over here. Could they come and just look at what you do for a little bit? They used to go to Clifford, you know, and you just have to start exploring it. It's not a profession that is out there. You know what I mean? We work with a small percentage of the population. So it's not a career that is out there in your face and easily noticeable. But it is definitely there. If you have grandma and grandpa are in a nursing home, go find a rehab room, ask the nurses, just say, hey, where's the therapy room? You know, and wander down, see if you can talk to somebody down there. So it really really has to almost be self-motivated, I think, to try and find out more about it.
Wow, this has been so informational. I know I've learned a lot, and I hope our students find this very beneficial. And since you are local, I'm sure that you might have some familiar faces contacting you in the future, or just wanting to learn more. So thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your time today, and we really appreciate you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it too. You are welcome.